Hello and welcome to episode 65 of the Sohbet Podcast. I am Dave.
I'm Siobhan, and this is, again, for anyone who's listened to us before, for the last 63 of those episodes, we were Breakfast Punx, but as of last week, we are now the Sohbet Podcast. We chose the name Sohbet because in the mystical ways of the world, it means spiritual conversations amongst friends.
And we are friends.
And we are friends, and we're going to have a conversation, and spiritual with a small s. We're going to always probably exaggerate that small s in this podcast.
We'll see how it goes. Who knows?
We will see how it goes. One of my friends who listens to the podcast asked why we called it Sohbet. I don't think she'd listened to the podcast at that point.
Well, then
because we do explain it right at the beginning. No, I'm sure she might be. But she mentioned that Sohbet literally just means conversation in Arabic. But I still think that fits. I don't think there's any problem. It probably means that's why there's tons of people called the Sohbet Podcast.
Well, one of the problems with not really being on social media is that when somebody like me picks a name for their podcast, what probably the first thing we should have done is to do a search of how likely it was that if somebody thought to themselves, I've heard about this podcast called the Sohbet Podcast.
Let me look it up. No one's finding us now.
If you Google this, I mean, we're definitely not on there anywhere, no. I don't think, at this point anyway. But yeah, there is probably about 1,000 other podcasts with this exact name. So,
if you found us, well done.
Chance has found you here. You lucky people. You're one of very few. Yeah. And that's how we like it.
I like it. It still works. It's all good. As mentioned before, spiritual with a small s is about all kinds of conversation about finding meaning, things that make sense or make life interesting and worthwhile, and anything that entails. So it's really, really vague, vast, and going to be silly. It was always kind of a bit like that, and so it's not. I don't think if you've listened before, it's going to be wildly different. I think if you listen to last week's episode, you can make your mind up from that. I think it was.
I don't know. I think we've gone in a. The last two episodes haven't necessarily painted the picture of exactly what this podcast is going to be about, I suppose. In as much as because we don't know, but also, or maybe it has.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? We don't know where we're going to go with this thing. But last week, I think probably was much more political than I expected anything to get.
Yeah.
And the week before that, we were talking about all sorts of religious stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And we're specifically after saying it's not really a religious thing. I mean, it's not really a religious thing.
But it definitely seemed like one on that first one. But we'll see. It could be. It's religious one day. It's political the next. We're not religious or political, or are we? I don't know. We're figuring it out.
I think it's about the grey spaces between things,
yes.
And the grey spaces between things are the things where there is actually worthwhile, meaningful areas of life, which we maybe once upon a time human beings were quite good at thinking about those. Grey areas, they were quite good at exploring things, and in a lot of ways religion and probably to some extent politics and certainly philosophy and things like that did explore those things. And I don't know that necessarily on a day-to-day basis human beings really explore them very much.
I would even go as far as to say as maybe, and I'm going to make a sweeping judgment here, which we're not really meant to do, but the world of podcasts leads us to the world of niches, genres, cliche, like tribalism.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess this podcast is trying to go back to being open, interested, inquisitive about people's opinions that are not your own. And maybe just letting go of whatever opinions you have and just free flowing into, I don't know, just let's talk about stuff we have no idea really what we're doing. That's a terrible podcast. We're going to just chat shit about stuff we don't know. But I mean, let's just not just stick to everything that we know, and that just leads you to be in a bubble of, you don't know what anything else is going on. It's better to be interested in other people's opinions and other people's worlds.
Yeah, I think the point that I was more making is that, and we'd said this, I think, on the first episode, is that most interesting things in life are things that you can't really put into words.
Mm.
We're trying to talk about the things that you can't really put into words.
I think it's going to go really well. I don't see anything going wrong with this.
It's a very, very minor aspiration that we've had.
We're going to do the impossible because that's what I think we're capable of. Terrible.
We like to start this podcast with, we have on the one previous episode to start this podcast by asking a question. We discussed this on a previous episode, the idea that the things that you put into your brain are the things that will come out of your mouth. That's maybe a slightly simplified way of putting it.
It's quite a mechanical version of it.
But so, Siobhan, what have you put into your brain that has created a more positive, more meaningful, more thoughtful couple of weeks in your life?
That was much more proper than I thought it was going to be. Well done, you. I like that. Well, mine's multifaceted, so it's good for loads of different reasons and covers all of that. So I'll try and do it in the briefest way possible, but doing it somewhat justice. I've been reading a book called Life Between the Tides by someone called Adam Nicholson. I recognise his name, but I don't recognise any. I thought I was going to recognise loads of his books in the front of this book, but I don't recognise one. But yeah, he's got that name that I feel like I must have seen books of his around. And it says, in search of rock pools and other adventures along the shore. And I'm a bit of a freak for shells and rock pools and little critters on the beach. So I just thought it was going to be about that.
The first time we ever came to Hastings to visit, I think it was the first time.
It was the first time.
We just before, long before we ever thought of moving here, or I think we'd thought of moving here actually, but we came down. I was sort of showing Siobhan around, and within the first half an hour, I think you'd seen a rock pool. You saw a rock pool whilst we were walking on the beach. Immediately rushed to it, and then immediately fell in it. Got covered in shit. Covered in
gunk. I had to go to the Superdrug and buy some wipes just to wipe myself down.
You did. You tried to wipe yourself down. And you stood under the hand dryer in the car aisle for a long time, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I smelt of sea for the whole day. It was lovely. It was actually really lovely.
It was very romantic. There and then we said, this will be our life.
This is life now. Falling into rock pools and just dusting ourselves in the pub. But it's a little bit about like critters and stuff, but it's just done this it's a really lovely book. It's about loads of different things. And I mean, one of the chapters is about looking at prawns, but it sounds really unexciting, but like studying them has led people to work out whether animals even have consciousness. And then it goes on about what consciousness is. And it becomes really like deep and philosophical along the way. So that's really wonderful in its own right, and it's just a lovely book. It's written really well, really poetic and just lovely. But something else kind of comes up along the way. So it talks a lot about these philosophical ideas. It talks about a lot of things about... It brings up the word logos, which is about opposites uniting and creating the like stability of one thing. But more to the point of all these ideas is they're all ideas that have come up in this little lecture series that me and Dave have been watching by a man called John Verveke. We're going to bring it up loads. We already have. He's done a lecture series called Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. And the first like 20 of them go through various philosophical points from Neolithic times up until now as a way of understanding the world.
I think we're both slightly in love with John Verveke.
Yeah. He's top of the roast in the list now. Like, he's coming around for dinner if we can make it happen. It never will. He's
charming in a very unusual way.
He's so weird. Yeah. I mean, I think we should do a whole section on him at some point.
Not on him, on his ideas.
On his ideas, yeah, but a little bit on him as well. But I think the kind of point of why I'm bringing up this book, the John Verveke thing, is I don't know how much I would have absolutely got out of this book had we not just watched that lecture series. And I just love the way that sometimes all these things feed into each other. And it can seem quite mystical, quite coincidental, and quite like fate and lovely. And without one, the other wouldn't have worked out so well. So isn't that lovely? Isn't that weird? But then if you want to be a bit more critical and cynical about it, I then started thinking about another book that we read not that long ago. I say we because you told me to read it. Not told me. You said I should read it because it was good.
We don't sit in the bed together reading
one book,
pages of
reading aloud from
under a candlelight like Tiny Tim.
Not quite. You read me bedtime stories, I swear. And
that would be weird fucking bedtime stories.
What, philosophy? Yeah, it'd be fucked up.
Do you want to sleep, Siobhan? I'm going to open your mind to the idea that you have no consciousness.
Where's your ego, Siobhan? Go to bed. You are not sleeping. But it's that Daniel Kahneman book, which another thing that it keeps cropping up. His name crops up everywhere. And he wrote a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. That's a whole episode of its own. But one thing that comes up in that, and weirdly that book comes up everywhere, and that's kind of the point of this, is our brains are fickle as shit. And we are prone to priming in so many ways. And this is one of them. This is one where we've just watched a lecture series that talks about all these Greek philosophical ideas. And then lo and behold, the next book I read is full of them. But that's not to say that every book I've read before was full of them and I just didn't notice them. But the way your brain connects the two is, oh my God, there's a connection here. And this is why tons of things happen. It's why conspiracy theories work. It's why, the really rubbish equivalent of this is I got a request on Facebook, I think, from someone I hadn't seen in a few years, and then happened to bump into them the very next day in town. And that's just priming. She's probably walked that street every day and I've never noticed, but because something has appeared in your brain, and it's so subconscious. And I guess the one nice thing I took from all of this is I just enjoy how fickle our brains are and how so much of it goes on without our understanding. And sometimes we get really stressed. We decide things mean things. We decide there's connections everywhere. We decide, I don't know, we can think negatively and then continue to think negatively. And it's just our brain priming us to do so. And when you can just take a step back from it and realize that, it's just like, who the fuck cares? Your brain's going to mess you up all the time. Or if you treat it well, it'll treat you well. And I just love it. Recently, I've treated it well, and it treated me well with picking out these bits in this book, and it's made this book really meaningful to me. And I appreciate that is literally just my brain picking out tiny things and making me happy. And I don't know, I just like the idea of how ridiculous it all is, how it's worked out positively in this way, how it may work out negatively in the future, and you just have to take a step back and realise it for what it is and try not to attach to it. Easier said than done, but in this case, it's been nice.
I think also it's a cumulative effect of knowledge as well. So the positive side of that is that, and this probably goes back to the very core of this idea of like what you put into your brain is sort of what comes out, is that the more knowledge that you shove into your brain, and my brain doesn't do a very good job of retaining knowledge, right, but it does keep some, and the more you shove in, the more of that knowledge which you see reflected back at you within the other bits of knowledge that you shove in. It's not a very good way of describing it, but I suppose
it's definitely how the philosophers of the world have described it. Shove it in your brain, and then sometimes more things go in, and then sometimes it falls out, and then you notice it, and it's all good.
I don't think that's what I said. But basically what I think what you're describing, though, is that, so if you had read this book at any other time in your life, you would have had a completely different experience of said book, because you've concentrated on the bits that ring true of some other thing that you've been reading. And the beauty of that is, and I think this is probably a big way that we, I don't know if meaning is, I might be misusing meaning in this context, but that's the sort of journey that we're all going on, isn't it? Every day that you have and everything that you do provides you with something that makes the next day different in some way. Yeah. It's why everybody's lives are completely different, and everyone's experience, even if so we've read a lot of the same books, but we've also not read a lot of the same books and read different ones. And so as a result of that, we both have had different experiences. But even if we were to read the exact same books, the things that stay in your brain, or watch the same things, or listen to the same podcasts or whatever, the things that stick in your brain are different from the things that stick in my brain. So therefore, when you move on to the next book, we're going to be noticing different things.
I think the joy of that, and I think you using the word journey really adds the impetus behind this bit, is that you can also then go back to the same books or back to the same things and get something else out of it, depending on you're a different person when you read a book 5 years later because of all these things. You've put so much different stuff in your brain. You've had different experiences. We had the same with anyone who's listened to our podcast ever before will get bored of us talking about Adam Curtis documentaries. But I think we're on our third or fourth rewatch of all of them, because every time we've watched other things, we've grown a little bit, we've read some other books, we've understood a new philosophy or a new thinker who he may have quoted in it, and we've not noticed the first 3 times, and then you come back to it the 4th time, you're like, oh gosh, that bit now makes sense, now something else is ringing out to me. And that's I don't know, it's just the joy of how our brain puts stuff away and makes things salient to us.
You could also describe that as magic, of course.
Ooh. Which
I would like to, if that's all right with the listener.
Why not? Let's bring it back, a bit more magic and less religion and philosophy. Why not?
But there is one other thing about this, which is on a slightly different note, but we've talked about this before, and at some point, I mean, if someone was clever enough, like I don't think either of us, and I don't even say this in a kind of like to minimise. I genuinely don't think that we're clever enough to do this. But since we started reading all sorts of different things, and I mean, even watching documentaries or listening to podcasts or whatever, one of the things that you realise when you open yourself up to things is that so many of the sort of big, in inverted commas, ideas are really overlap with each other. So someone will say something which is absolutely echoed in Christianity.
Yeah.
And then that is also absolutely echoed in ancient philosophy. And then that is absolutely echoed in Buddhism. Yeah. And then that is absolutely echoed in cognitive science. Yeah. That is absolutely echoed in physics. It's, and like I say, my brain is just not big enough to be able to do that. But the amount of times that we've said to each other randomly, oh my God, that's exactly what this other person was saying, but from a completely different perspective and a completely different discipline. There are like, I genuinely believe, and I would love to say on this podcast, eventually, by the end of the conclusion of this podcast will be when we work out what these 20 big ideas are. But I truly believe that there are just like this handful of really big ideas about how to live your life, and and they're all metaphorically from different places. So again, if it's a religious one, chances are there's the message that you're getting has something to do with obeying a certain god, for example. Yeah. Philosophy, it comes from almost like obeying your own consciousness and thinking logically, and then just from academia, it just sort of comes from thought, I suppose, for want of a better word. And maybe, in fairness, maybe this is exactly that, because we're only about halfway through that John Verveke lecture series. It is 50 hours long, guys. So if it sounds interesting, I don't know that we've really even described it. If it sounds interesting, it really is, and it's really worth your time. But it is a big commitment. It's
longer than watching all of Breaking Bad. which is a big commitment.
I don't think there's any comparison there, no, is there? Because the other
thing
but
people
is
will do that.
Yeah, right. Well, maybe it's too early to get onto this, but it's the difference between something being made to put your brain to rest,
fair enough,
and something made to make your brain work.
True.
And we have way too many things in our society. And this is the disease of Netflix and the disease of Amazon Prime and the disease of fucking everything, and equally, let me say, the disease of probably most of my favourite films. Like, it's not just I'm not really blaming the modern world, but we have a million things that we can slump on a sofa and we'll sort of put our brains half to sleep, and we'll automatically play the next episode, and you don't really have to engage with it in any sort of meaningful way.
No.
You could still enjoy it, and those things aren't necessarily bad, and some of them are very well made, and an awful lot of the art that's being made now, particularly in probably more movies and TV, they're being made specifically to do that.
Yeah.
So I had this conversation with someone at some point about, I watched a weird little local news documentary from the 1970s about an island off the south coast of Ireland, the country Ireland, that John Lennon bought in the late 60s or early 70s. And he gave it to some commune of hippies so that they could all go and live on it. And I was reading this book, and it came up in that, and they mentioned that there was this footage of these hippies. So I thought, I'll watch that. and it was proper. Like, it was so... I mean, it's fair to say it was quite badly made in a lot of ways. It was... they had good cameras, and they knew kind of what they were doing, and they sort of had plums in their mouth when they did, like the anchor, wasn't, but it was just shoddy in comparison. It was so much more difficult. No, it was so much more difficult to watch,
right,
than anything you would see, even like a YouTube video would be now, right? So with digital cameras and with all of the equipment that you can buy for almost nothing now. So the camera shots were all really long, for example. There wasn't like quick edits, It wasn't an easy watch on the eye. And partly that was because of the quality, because it was made on film and it was made on cheap film probably, and part of it might have even been its age as well. Maybe it looked better when it was first made, I don't really know. But just comparing that with, like, let's say, for example, its equivalent now, which is like the 24-hour news cycle, it was really interesting, and I really enjoyed it, and it was about 20 minutes long. But once I finished those 20 minutes, I was done watching anything. Like, it was because it was quite dry, it was quite, and it made me think, whilst obviously anybody who would compare a newly made news story or a documentary, let's say a Netflix documentary, right? If you compared the Netflix documentary to this old fucking 1970s newsreel from the 70s, you would every single person in the entire world would have to agree the Netflix thing is made way better.
Yeah.
Everything about it's made better. Clearly all the equipment and stuff like that is better. It's presented with more like panache. The people doing it probably know what they're doing more. Everything is fundamentally better. But actually, the experience of watching it, I think I got more out of the 1970s thing because it was kind of awkward to watch. I had to concentrate on it because it was something that I was interested in and I wanted to learn about. And B, there's no way if you had the like eternal scroll, it's not a scroll, is it? But the eternal like starting of the next episode.
Yeah.
You would stop it and you would go and do something else. You go and read a book, or you go for a walk, or you go and cook dinner or something. And so it's fundamentally worse, no question, but probably it would lead to you having a better life if TV still looked like that.
If it was still a little bit jarring, so you had to, I don't know, it wasn't so easy to watch. Yeah, you had to actually try and pay a bit more attention because it was difficult to hear and difficult to really see what was going on. It was jarring. Yeah,
it wasn't difficult though. Not really. Difficult is probably a bit too much. Like it was, you could easily follow it. I mean, it was made. Had a narrative and it was sensible and it was just people being interviewed and it was perfectly fine.
Yeah,
they did play some really bad music where somebody was improvising on a flute, I think, or a recorder or something, and it was fucking dire. So
apologies if any of you hippies are listening.
No, fuck you if there's any hippies listening.
Yeah, we're accepting everything, but not improvising.
Yeah, I didn't mean that. I was having fun. But no, it just made me think. I don't know. So, I think you could think of so many things about the modern world in this context. So many things have been made easier and better, fundamentally better. But things are better made. Things are easier to accept, and maybe in some respects that means that if you're going to watch, for example, a documentary, you would think that, well, this is a better made documentary, so my brain is going to take more stuff on. Now, this may just be my brain, but it just made me realise, no, actually, it makes my brain relax too much and I take in less. And this John Verveke lecture, going all the way back to, an hour ago when I first started talking, apologies, is, it's not shoddy, it's fine. It's just literally a camera angle of a man talking at you with a whiteboard behind him. Like, there's nothing more to it than that.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, I think podcasts are probably like that generally. Even the ones that are filmed quite well. It's just two people sitting there with 2 or 3 different camera angles. It's not, it's not like fancy editing.
No.
Nothing's been sort of souped up.
Well, I guess a similar thing is, I think it's fairly known. I couldn't definitely claim to know any science behind this, so apologies if this doesn't make any sense, but I think it does.
I'm hoping this is going to be a bombshell.
It's not a bombshell at all. But I think it's things everyone kind of knows about this making it easier. Like if you look up a fact in a book and you have to find effort to go and find the correct book that is going to have that fact, and, you know, work your way from the glossary to the chapter to read through it and find out your fact. You remember that better than if you Google something. I'm pretty sure you've told me an actual fact around this, and I'm not going to remember it, but I think it's been proven quite often over and over that the quick, like, if you find a word or if you find a fact really quickly, you don't remember it. Your retention of that fact is not like nothing. By the end of the day, you've forgotten it, sort of thing.
I'm fairly sure it's from the book Stolen Focus, and I think that somebody. I mean, he didn't do this, so I suppose it's not from there, but that's where we found out about it.
Yeah,
from.
Where the study was.
I think that
referenced.
There's some scientific finding that says that if you read something on paper, you I think you take in. I want to say it's something high. It might. I'm guessing this, but I think it's like 50% more information from paper than
something
from a screen.
like that. It's like your recall of it and then your understanding as well.
But I do think that that's partly because the same thing is going on in your brain. When you look at a screen, your brain relaxes itself. When you look at a page, it wakes itself up.
Okay, but I wonder if there's like a connection to those things that are just like swishy and really easy edited, and you just kind of like your brain just goes, oh, this is like a big hug and I'm ready to shut down. And when things are jarring, your brain's like, well, I can't quite turn off because this isn't that easy to watch, so I have to try a bit harder, and therefore your brain's more ready to go. Again, there's probably tons of people that have done really easy research on this, but I'm fairly sure that this is accurately proven over and over again. And I wonder if that links to the watching of that news as opposed to a documentary.
Well, you might even
Netflix.
take this further.
Ooh.
A mild discomfort is really good for you.
Yeah.
You know, like if things being made too easy does not lead to a better life, fundamentally. It doesn't lead to you taking in more from an experience or from anything. So mild discomfort is really good for you. And
it literally leads to growth. Like, very, very boringly, but like when you work out, you break your muscle to make it better. It's
or you give yourself a bit of disease in order to not get the disease.
Yeah, I thought you were talking crap then, but I forgot that's what a vaccine. I was like, what?
Well, Dave's off with his conspiracy theories
there we go.
Again.
And then they're giving you a disease and they're pretending it's. I was like, oh no, that is literally what a vaccine is. Yeah, it's crazy.
And they're making it rain with chemtrails. Is that what chemtrail? I never found out what the actual chemtrail conspiracy theory is.
Fuck knows, isn't it? Just
I know what they are, but I don't know what the conspiracy. I don't know why it matters. Yeah,
bet flat earthers have got something to say.
I think they have. I think I don't know if it's got anything to do with flat Earth, but I imagine it's those people that.
It would definitely. I think we should do flat Earth on one of these again, but let's leave that for another time then.
Maybe. Did we do a flat Earth episode on Breakfast Punx? Because we would have been much harsher about them than we would be now.
I think we bring them up often because they are my. Apart from Heaven's Gate, they're my favourite conspiracies.
Oh, that's a big take there, Siobhan. I mean, there's a lot of good cults.
There are a lot of good cults, but I think we've definitely talked about it before, and maybe we can bring it up again in the future. But the documentary about flat earthers is probably one of my favourite things I've ever watched, and I'm not laughing at. I'm just so intrigued. People have completely built their life around something. And Heaven's Gate is the other one, and we did an episode on that. So if you're interested in the Breakfast Punx side of what we've done, or if you've listened before, go listen to the Heaven's Gate episode, because it's the best cult that ever existed until they didn't. Anyway, spoiler.
I was looking at pictures of their trainers the other day on somebody's phone.
Oh, yeah?
There you go. That's what I'm just, you were talking about coincidences, and that was just a couple of days ago.
That is a coincidence,
I was looking
at
a picture of a corpse from the Heaven's Gate cult's trainers.
I'm glad you're using your phone for good things.
It wasn't my phone. It wasn't my choice. I didn't get it up. Someone showed it to me.
Knew the Heaven's Gate stuff.
Yeah, a lot of people know the Heaven's Gate stuff.
If you know the Heaven's Gate stuff, write to us. I want to talk about it.
Siobhan wants to be your friend.
Not because I want to do the same thing that they did. Believe me, if you make friends with me, we're not swanning off on a comet or not. Anyway, let's not go on to about Heaven's Gate. You missed the comment. You've missed it. Oh, well, did they?
Yeah.
Did they?
Well, there's one guy, isn't there? There's one guy that was in the cult that survived it and is really annoyed that he survived. And he's waiting for the comet to come back. He still believes, and I think he thinks that all of his friends did actually get on the comet and they're going to come back for him.
There's a few that went after. I mean, I don't know how they got there, but
They were in Holland, I think. That's why they went after. I think it was just time differences.
Well, in fairness, they have to wait for the comet to get around to them. Anyway, if you don't...
the comet moves pretty quick. I didn't think they had to wait like 2 days. Whatever it was. I think they were confused.
I think that's minimising entirely the whole problem there. Again, anyone who's listening to this going, what the hell? Look up Heaven's Gate. Look it up. And they had really good outfits. That's not the whole point.
Good shoes too.
Good shoes, good outfits, good leader. It was all good, really. Anyway, Dave, I think I've answered my bit. What have you put into your brain that has made your life more meaningful, thoughtful, given you joy, and hopefully will lead to you being a better person?
Well, are you ready for this? Oxygen.
You've breathed. Is that where we're going with this? I have breathed. Well done. Is that it? Good.
Well, no. So I think it's at some point early on, I feel like we're asking this question. Whilst I want to pick like little things or like whatever I happen to be doing, there are certain quite big things that we've changed about our lives over the course of like I don't know, like a good few years.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest ones for me is breath work. And so I think I need to get it out of the way. And I do apologise because I know a lot of people get sick of people talking about Wim Hof.
I was about to say, we have really come over holier than thou in these first 3 episodes. I apologise.
know. Well, unfortunately, if you're going to do a podcast like this, I think you almost have to.
Well, we are. So that's where we're going with this.
Yeah. Sorry.
Also, that's the kind of shits we've become. Dave does breathwork now. Let's hear about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not very holier than thou about it. I just feel like it's improved my life. I'm literally just using myself as a guinea pig to find out the different things that for me work quite well. They might not work for you, and I'm not going to go on about it. I'm not sort of a convert. I've not joined the breathwork cult.
Just works for you.
But yeah, and it's very simple. Well, and it goes along with cold water, cold showers. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to go out on about it too long, but I just probably want to acknowledge that it's something that I genuinely think has helped me in myriad different ways. All I do every morning is 3 rounds of 30 big deep breaths, and then hold your breath for a minute, and then do a big deep breath in and hold that for 15 seconds. Takes about, I think I've got it down to about 6 or 7 minutes. When I first started doing it, I was doing it quite competitively with myself, which was great actually, because it's really trippy when you do it. I managed once to do 3 minutes, hold my breath for 3 minutes.
Also, can I just say, for those who don't know what Wim Hof is, when you say holding your breath, you're not actually holding in a breath. You breathe out and then you stop breathing.
You empty your lungs, yeah.
So I think because you asked me to do this with you when you first started doing it, and I didn't know it was that. And it is quite terrifying to breathe all of your air out and then just stop breathing.
Yeah.
So I think it's really, it's quite something.
I mean, the idea is you stay calm and you're supposed to relax.
Yeah, so, no. First time I did it, I was like, panic, 20 seconds out. But 3 minutes.
But I'm not saying that to boast at all, because it was because I will say this as well. I can't do that anymore. I don't know exactly what happened. So I did this for a while, and what happened was when I first started doing it, the breath holds were just getting slightly longer. Every week or so, I'd probably add another 10 seconds on or something.
Yeah,
and I got up to and you do that anyway within those 3 rounds normally. So you do the first one short, the second one slightly longer, and the last one slightly longer. Or you can do as many rounds as you want. But yeah, so when I first started doing this, I kept extending it, and I got to a point where my last breath hold was like 2.5 minutes. And that was kind of pretty standard, and that was all right. And then every now and again, I'd really push it. And you do feel a bit like you're going to die, but
sounds great.
But when I managed the actual 3-minute one, I did have a little hallucination between my eyelids. So I mean, it's it's pretty good shit. But what happened was, after probably about a year of doing it, I got a bit ill, like just a cold or something, and went from being able to do like 2.5 minutes relative, or at least 2 minutes pretty easily, to not even being able to make a minute. And I've never got past that. So now I can do just over a minute. I could probably just about do a 2 minute if I really tried. But I just thought, well, fuck it. If that's all my body wants to do, that's all my body wants to do. Yeah. And here, fundamentally, what it does really nicely is it gives you a little bit of a high, and I can say without question, if I wake up with a headache, it's gone. I don't very rarely take pills for a headache, all of the rest of my body hurts. So I take pills for that sometimes.
Life is pain, but my head's fine.
But it wakes you up really well. It's worth I get up 10 minutes earlier than I will. Well, I do a lot of things in the morning, but we won't go through them all. But for this specifically, I get up 10 minutes earlier than I possibly would otherwise. But as a result, and so therefore you would think, well, getting up earlier, you're going to be more tired. But doing this, it wakes you up completely. And I'm at my absolute best, I would say, in the morning now, which was never the case before. But mixed with a cold shower, basically, and those two things, I swear by them, and I cannot. So it's another one of these things that I cannot really put into words. I think that they say right. If you listen to Wim Hof, who, by the way, I started watching. I've never really. I read his book. It's not a very well written book, but it's got a lot of good shit in it. It's really cool, but it's not. You can tell that he's not a man of many words. And then I think I watched like a Vice documentary about him once or something, where it's literally just him making people do this crazy stuff. Yeah. And so he's just screaming at them, basically.
He made them go up a mountain in the snow with like no clothes on. Yeah. Oh, with some clothes, but not a lot.
Oh yeah, pants, I think.
Just their pants. No shoes.
But I sat down. There's a new, as of when we're recording this podcast, there's a new interview with him on that podcast, Diary of a CEO. Oh yeah. I'm not crazy about the podcast, but it's all right. And I thought, I'll watch Wim Hof and see what he's got to say for 2 hours. I could not. He's a madman. It's just like, it's lovely in a way. It's quite, I don't know. I don't know if he appeared to be drunk to me. He had a very red nose as well.
Has he held his breath for like a minute,
it might like just
5 minutes and then just gone on?
Yeah, you get a red nose from being in the snow too, I suppose. Yeah. But he's just crazy about this thing that he believes in. He just thinks it solves everything. And so he can't help but just shout at you about how brilliant it is and why it's brilliant. And he'd be asked really sensible questions like, so, what was your early part of your life like? And he'll just start screaming at you about how if you breathe, it sorts your core out and your head and it makes all your, and it's proved by science. He keeps saying it's proved by science, and it is proved by science, but but you wouldn't think it was. Yeah. If you just took him completely out of context, you'd be like, who is that?
He did luck upon that in a way, didn't he? Because didn't he say like, I just happened upon all this and then the science came later?
There's a hint of mysticism behind him, which and he's had quite a sad life. He's the mother of his kids. I don't know if they were married or not, it doesn't really matter, but the person, his partner or whatever, killed herself when they were quite young. He grew up. When he was younger, he lived in a squat in Amsterdam, and sort of had this crazy life. And then I don't know how many kids he's got, but after his partner or wife killed herself, he was sort of left looking after them. Right. And then at some point, he just decided he was going to start doing all of this crazy stuff, like walking up mountains in the snow in his pants. And he did something where he didn't drink for 8 days or something and ran through the desert. He's done all these insane things, and he's right. They are all of them. He involves all these scientists to like test him and make sure he's not. In that context, it feels a little bit like a carny act, sort of like Houdini getting a doctor to make sure that his heart really did stop or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, so he's an insane person.
But he did work
out a wonderful insane person that has come up with something that I genuinely think is incredible. And and I do, so all of the claims that he makes are like everything. Basically, one of the claims is you'll never get ill. Yeah. And like I said, I did get ill once, but I think only
you didn't get ill for a long time.
And I will say this: I've noticed over the last probably I don't know how long, maybe 6 months. So you've gotten ill a bunch of times. Like,
you don't get majorly, but you're not catching it.
Yeah, I don't catch it. I don't know if that's got anything to do with
this or not. You
also,
when you were drinking, said that your hangovers weren't a problem anymore.
Yeah, and if you've got a hangover and you do this breathing technique, then it gets rid of it completely. Yeah. So it is magical in that context.
And it makes you warm. When we were watching, don't want to keep bringing up the fact we went to see Brian Adams, but you were freezing cold and you were like, I'm just going to do that breathing, and you were like, I'm warm now.
Yeah, it does.
And then you got cold and you were like, I'm going to do the breathing again, and then you warmed up.
Again, you look like a mad person standing in but it didn't really matter at Brian Adams.
Oh, it's fine. Everyone.
I look like the least mad person there.
Yeah, no one could see you over their phones anyway, so it's fine.
Well, exactly, no. But yeah, I don't know. I can say, and it might be a mixture of loads of different things. Like I said, there's a lot of different stuff that we both respectively have done over the last few years, probably. some of them not for that long, but that we weren't doing before. But I can say that I think clearer. I think my memory's got slightly better. I think that it was. But you pulled a face. The ladies and gentlemen at home didn't see you pull that face, but it's not that it's good. It's that it's got better.
It's fighting that early onset dementia as hard as it can, holding up the wall while the waves tipple over the top. Yeah, it's doing well.
Let's all celebrate the fact that Dave's losing his mind. But but I mean, I think also just it's improved my mood. I mean, there's a lot of, and there are again a lot of scientific findings. But I mean, in Wim's eyes, it just removes depression and anxiety completely. All you have to do is breathe and have a cold shower, and you're sorted. I wouldn't necessarily.
It helps to be manic and whatever he is.
Well, I don't know, but maybe. Well, I don't know.
It's fine.
But so that's what I've done.
Put oxygen in yourself.
Put oxygen in myself.
Really hard.
And I think it has... fitness as well. I think that I'm probably a lot fitter. And that's partly because I've done other things. But I do think that this has sort of added to that.
It helps you. So
I would encourage anybody to look at... Don't watch a podcast where Wim Hof is interviewed for a long period of time.
It'll put you right off.
But I mean, maybe read his book. His book, like I say, his book isn't great, but it's very short and it's got a lot of practical stuff in it. And... it's a little bit too much. It is a little bit... The problem is because he's got science behind him, sometimes he makes claims that just sound like... they might be true to a point. Yeah. Like, it might have been proven that people that do the Wim Hof breathing technique get ill, 50% less than people that don't. I've plucked that number out of the sky. But of course, that doesn't really mean anything fundamentally, and this isn't a conspiracy against science. But it's like that doesn't necessarily mean that you as an individual, if you start doing it, won't ever get ill or will get ill 50% less. It's not as simple as that. That's not what the science proves. It just proves that this has had some positive effect on some people. But I think I'm at a point where I really swear by it, and I think my day would feel strange if I didn't do it.
I think you didn't do it once. I went for a run and you were like, actually I felt my lungs actively not as good, and I find it harder to breathe.
I was going to have a heart attack. I could feel my heart smashing against my ribs. That's probably not great either, I suppose.
It's not great. But I mean, I don't know, if you do all that breathing, it's like working out your lungs a bit as well before you go stretching them out. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Good on you. Breathing and
running. No, I'm not asking for congratulations. No, I'm more saying it for the purposes of if anybody's ever considered doing that or doesn't know about it. I mean, I feel, if you're remotely in
the world.
Well, no, not the world, I wouldn't say. Although I think Wim Hof, he got quite famous. I think pre-COVID, because I never knew about him until this book came out. And literally someone came into the bookshop, not the one I'm working in now, but a different one, and said and bought it and said, "Oh, this guy." This guy was full of conspiracy theories, and it was just shortly after lockdown and stuff like this. And like, I initially thought this Wim Hof guy must be another, Jordan Peterson or something. But Jordan Peterson doesn't really have conspiracy theories, so maybe that wasn't the right person to pick. But he's in that
the
sphere.
Next person
he's probably
who's provocative and
but not David Icke. I'm trying to think of someone between Jordan Peterson and David Icke, and
Imagine if David Icke had made up the Wim Hof method, the David Icke method, which is just like heavy breathing and thinking about lizards.
Well, David Icke in his 60s. I think in his 60s, or maybe, I don't know how old he is now, but recently, having, led the life that he's led, which is a very interesting one, went and took some ayahuasca in Peru or somewhere. And
is he all right?
He's brilliant. I mean, he's still got all of his conspiracy theories, but he's basically sort of changed them a little bit to say that more or less all human beings are just one pulse and we're all moving through consciousness as one together.
He's had a transformative experience.
He has had a very transformative experience.
What babe?
Well,
no, not really, but
he's not nice looking.
No, I don't mean that. I could go on about David Icke as well. Let's not. Heaven's Gate, David Icke, all for future. We'll talk about them more one day, maybe.
I don't know how you would talk about David Icke.
with compassion and interest.
No, I mean how you would cover it all. Unless you're David Icke, who I think and has given lectures of like 9 hours long.
At Cambridge. Can you imagine those people just sat there? I mean, we watched it and those people in the audience are like, what have we done? Because some of it starts well and then he gets straight into that lizard action and then you're like, oh no, I'm out.
I don't think he mentions the lizards in that one.
He gets into something. It does wander into
conspiracy.
Yeah, but it starts weirdly. You're like, you spend the first hour going, do you know what? He hasn't said anything I don't necessarily agree with yet. And then
please, everybody at home, watch the Cambridge lecture of David Icke and see what Siobhan is willing to believe.
Well, no,
because by an hour in, I think he'd come up with a lot.
I don't know.
Stuff.
I think it was we went to watch it for a laugh, and then it was a while before I laughed. I was like, oh no, actually, I don't know. He eases in.
It was definitely way less funny than you would think.
Yeah.
But I think by then he might have taken the ayahuasca, so I think maybe it changed a bit.
I don't know. I'd like to see that. Well, I think we've covered what we've put into our brains and how our lives have improved. Oxygen, book, and talking about David Icke's made me feel very happy right now. Bless him. His books are still in bookshops and they are coming out still. He's still got more.
So what I was going to say earlier was that he can't. Sorry to keep on about David Icke. He just can't. So you couldn't talk about him because he has so many different ideas, but he himself has all of those ideas right at the tip of his tongue.
All the time.
And if you just let him go, like I swear, I don't know if it was 8 hours or 12 hours. He did a lecture. This was a long time ago. I mean, he's much older now, I suppose. But I'm sure it was 8 hours long.
Where he just went.
And he just did not stop. And he talks quick. And there's constantly new ideas. It's like hard to follow.
Oh.
But he follows it. He knows exactly what he's saying. I don't think many people in the audience do.
No.
I don't,
I imagine being in his direct family group must be quite difficult.
His audience would be very interesting as well. It's a collection of sort of old hippies, neo-Nazis.
Yeah.
Probably some ironic people.
Yeah. I mean, that Cambridge group must have been, I can't even imagine, just
that would have been different.
Students that were up for a laugh. I can't imagine there would have been many people that were actually for him, which is a shame. But who knows? Yeah. Well, at the end of the last episode, we were talking about the idea of doing nice things for the sake of doing nice things, and how when you say good things and you're kind to other people, you get a benefit for it in your brain. And we mentioned it as a bit of a throwaway comment at the end, and then we thought, hold that thought, this might be something to discuss a little further. And so that's what we thought we would talk about today, this idea of we have control over the way our brain can change. And there's a thing called brain plasticity, which I think we're going to talk about
not in a scientific
way, because my goodness, I'm throwing that term in early and then you're probably going to wonder why we don't explain it very well. But just this notion, and we'll go a bit more further into it, of, I mean, it's a little bit why we do in the beginning bit of the podcast, that what you put in to your brain will come out of your mouth. It's this idea that the brain is a muscle. It has loads of different connections in your brain, and if you use some of those connections more, they'll continue to grow, and you can get rid of some of the other ones. This works both a negative and a positive way, and I think that's what we were going to sort of explore at this juncture of the podcast.
Yeah, and I think that's what brain plasticity explains. But I mean, if assuming that there's no sort of cognitive scientists listening to this, I mean, I think we've
apologies if there are, because you've really come onto the wrong one. Yeah, we're bastardizing your world right now.
Well, no, but I think we, as with most things that we're going to talk about on this podcast, we're going to be talking from as lay people, very much as lay people, but with a basic understanding of what this is. And I think possibly looking not to describe what this is, certainly not describing the science behind it, but just to describe how fundamentally how our experiences of life have either worked in a positive or negative way.
Yeah, 100%.
And it comes down to, so the other thing that we talked a bit about last time, but sort of came up towards the end of the last episode, of this idea of pretending, be careful who you pretend to be because you are who you pretend to be, or equally be careful who you pretend other people are because people are who you pretend to be. And that's a Kurt Vonnegut quote, as we addressed last episode. But this also brings to mind another favourite who we have talked about on the podcast before, which is Robert Anton Wilson, who it would be very difficult to explain all of his thoughts about this, but fundamentally on the simplest possible level, for our purposes here, he put a lot of thought into this idea of if you basically just decide something is true and jump in with both feet, then, and he had taken a lot of drugs too. So let's acknowledge that.
Name the thing he decided was true.
Well, a number of different things. So he's written a book where he chooses different things. So one of them is that an alien exists from Xenu and is in contact with him.
Fantastic.
One of them is basically just that it's not fundamentally that Christianity is true. It's specifically Jesus.
Right.
I think there's a bunch more actually.
Something about a rabbit. I feel like
there might have been
a rabbit
as well. There's a lot of weird thought experiments these days. And they are very much thought experiments as well. So what we're talking about is probably less thought experimenty and more just like how this can affect your life on a daily basis in small ways. He went absolutely full hog with the whole thing. But what he found was, and it comes back to what you were talking about before, about kind of priming, really. It's about seeing the things. So we all see the things that we want to see, or that our subconscious wants to see. We have some control over our subconscious, and we have some lack of control over our subconscious.
I think quite a lot of lack of control, it seems.
Well, yeah, but I think the idea, and maybe this is the idea going all the way to the end of how you can affect your brain plasticity, is that really it does. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier, putting good things into your brain. If you continuously tell yourself that everybody is shit, then you're definitely going to notice how everyone is shit. If you continuously tell yourself that everyone is great, you're much more likely to see the good in other people, for example. That's like the simplest one, I suppose. Yeah.
But I think it's one that we nearly always, people as a whole are quite prone to forgetting. We're quite prone to this like negativity cycle, and then wondering why everything is shit.
But I think the negativity cycle exists separate from ourselves. One of the problems is that our society is one which wants us to think, and this we're not going to get into any more politics, but this is a lot to do with capitalism. It's not a conspiracy at all. It's just capitalism. But our society wants us to think that everybody is out to get us, because that way we'll stay at home more and buy more shit and watch more crap on Netflix and not watch news reports from small towns in Ireland from the 1970s.
Or 50 hours of John Verveke.
Well, no, I don't know. In some respects, maybe you would. YouTube is definitely, an example of this, even though there is some good stuff on there and an awful lot of bad stuff, clearly. But, it's not really any different. Sitting down and watching 50 hours of John Verveke lecture is not that different from watching anything else on YouTube.
Yeah, true.
And to some extent we're still in that position because we're happy to stay in our house.
Yeah, no, it's true. I think, well, one of those, using the YouTube analogy actually, is a way that you could directly show this. If you only look for things that are fear-mongering and scary, then the fear-mongering and scary things will be shown to you more and more and more. Whereas on YouTube at the minute, we've got it pretty good. And it's only because of searching for more things. We search for like wholesome, nice things.
We've got so wholesome that most of the things that get suggested on my YouTube at the moment are church services.
I mean, it has gone quite that way. And there could be a conspiracy there, who knows. But it is that kind of algorithmically, it then tries to show you things that are similar to what you have already searched for, and your brain can kind of do a similar-ish thing. So when you were saying like, oh, we have some conscious control and some not conscious control of our subconscious, I think it's far more that we don't have actual control over our subconscious at all, because it just does things automatically without our knowing, like priming. But knowing that means that the more times we feed ourselves the nice thing, the more times our subconscious, without our knowledge, will provide the goods. So whilst we can't control our subconscious, we can feed it enough things that it's likely to help us out a bit. Yeah,
and going back to that algorithm thing, algorithms, I think we're clearly everyone is aware of this, right? I mean, there's people might be fairly comfortable with it or not or whatever, or they're just addicted to social media or whatever. And that just is what it is. But I think we all know that obviously through algorithms we're only getting back the things that we're asking to see, and the positives and the negatives of that. And I think the negatives of that are pretty well established, and I don't think there's any need to necessarily go on about them. But one of the things that I often think of, and maybe this is pushing the point too far, maybe, but is that those algorithms do not just affect the things that you see on the screen, whether that screen be YouTube or whether that screen be your phone, or whether it be social media or whatever, whether it even be your Netflix. I mean, Netflix works in exactly the same way. It's obviously less damaging because the things aren't 20 seconds of somebody shouting about whatever, some extreme politics or whatever. But I have a theory that those algorithms are worth staying away from as much as possible, simply because they don't just affect the things you see, they also affect the way that you communicate with other people. So how many conversations does anybody have that start with, fundamentally, this is my bugbear, that start with the words, did you see? Or have you seen?
Oh, yeah.
For example.
Or can I show you?
Because did you see always means now, I'm sure it didn't once upon a time, well, it couldn't have once upon a time, but did you see always means something came up on someone's social media, something came up, a video came up on the YouTube or whatever. Now, don't get me wrong, there's not really anything wrong with that. I'm not having to pop at anybody for talking about something funny or whatever that they saw on their social media account. But the thing that I don't think often people put together is the fact that algorithm that is going on fundamentally inside your phone, but equally that we view as going on slightly inside our own heads, is actually not just going on inside your head. That's the way that a lot of us included, and I mean even me being completely off social media, it's absolutely one of the major things that I converse about with people. That algorithm works its way into your actual life, is what I'm trying to say. So your conversations are suddenly chosen. And if you think about it, and this is going to sound a bit conspiratorial, but it's not really, because it is. If you go back far enough, the conversations that you're having with others are being chosen by an AI at Facebook or an AI at TikTok. So it's almost like it's almost like a Cronenberg film. It's like
the feelers feeling out into the. It spreads out like a web.
Yeah, and so whilst most of the discussions around algorithms are about the negativity that it's putting into our brains, the effect it's having on our mental health, and all of those things are absolutely true and very important. But I don't think I've ever heard anybody talk about this and acknowledge the fact that it's not just your brain, it's also anyone you meet. Your algorithms are affecting the way that you're conversing and dealing with the rest of the world. And so me, and I'm not saying I'm completely free of algorithms, but me as someone who is completely off social media, my life is still ultimately affected in loads of different ways by everybody else's social media feed. And that is a bit just when someone comes at me with their phone and says, look at this funny picture, right? A, that's not that bad of a thing, but B, that's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that our brains are being shaped by Facebook or TikTok or Instagram or whatever, or Netflix or whatever. And that is what, again, keeps going back to that thing of that's what you're putting into your brain, so therefore that's what's coming out of your mouth, and therefore that's what society as a whole is getting from you.
And I guess with people reading less and less and spending their time more and more just doom scrolling and watching Netflix, or going from algorithm to algorithm, it means that you end up connecting with the same sorts of people with the same sorts of views, and you end up in these, no matter how right on or liberal you might think you're being, if you're only getting your information those ways, you are just going to end up sitting in a bubble with people who think the same as you and reflect yourself back at you. And you're not going to have a lot of arguments or conversations or debates about things outside of what you've all been shown, because, like you say, before you know it, you're all kind of interlinked via the things you've been seeing and following on the on the internet or on social media or, you know, via Netflix. What Netflix is suggesting to you. I mean, Netflix dictates pretty much most of the culture and the art that people watch or have. Because
I don't know.
I mean, now that we don't have it, there's tons. Any conversation that ever happens at work about like, oh, what are you watching at the minute? Anything you're watching? I don't know any of it, and it is all being dictated by a couple of streaming things that are all showing the same little algorithms of stuff. Yeah, I don't know. Don't want to be 1984 about it, but everyone's watching the same thing.
But just to sit on the other side of the fence, I would argue that in a way what you've just described is quite a nice thing. And what I mean by that is that, so 20 years ago,
when we had 4 channels,
or even if we didn't have 4 channels, there were certain things that were on telly that brought people together in possibly not in a positive way, but maybe because I've got fond memories of it, I see it as being in a positive way. And so I think one of the problems with everybody just having this little screen that is is just attuned to their brains is that we've sort of lost that. And in a way, that Netflix thing where it's, I mean, I suppose I would argue that it's only bad. The Netflix thing is only bad because so much of what they make is such trash.
Shit, it's just mindless.
And I'm not saying that things were brilliant in the past.
Yeah.
So I mean, clearly there was a time, and I'm sure this time still exists, when a lot of people the next day at work got together and talked about what had happened on EastEnders and Coronation Street the night before. That's no better. In fact, that's probably worse in a lot of ways. Certainly doesn't involve any sort of critical thought or intelligence. But so to some extent, the Netflix thing, whilst it seems to me to be more positive, it's almost a good thing. If there's like a big Netflix release, and everybody, particularly if it's like, let's just say you like science fiction, and so everyone that likes science fiction all watches the new Netflix science fiction show. Yeah, that gives you something to talk about with your science fiction friends.
That's true. It's
true. So in that context, it seems, I would argue that that's kind of the positive side of this. Yeah. The problem is more where you're getting algorithms that are literally showing you something completely different to your friends / some overlap. And like you say, you end up in these bubbles, but you don't know. None of us know what anybody else is seeing on their social media. And the reality is that conversation, you could never have that conversation. If you and your partner, right? You've been together you're us, right? Us. Mm-hmm. We've been together 10 years. We know each other, I would say, extraordinarily well. We live together. Our lives are, inseparable.
Well, yeah. We're a mash.
We are a mash of humour.
We're a Cronenberg of human. We
are. But, and now this isn't quite as appropriate, but back in the time where we were both continuously on our phones, we would have talked about things that we saw on our phones. We might have shown each other things. There would have been things that we both saw. There would have been stuff that if we shared, obviously we share a lot of friends. So our friend posts something, we both see it. We talk about the thing that our friend shares. All of that is completely, normal. But the thing is that we could never have sat down and said, here's the 300 things that I saw in the last hour pop up on my Facebook page, and you compare that with me with the 300 things that you've seen in the last hour, and then you suddenly realise, oh shit, Facebook is trying to make me a bit of a Nazi, and it's trying to make you a bit of a communist or something, or you whatever. And that's an extraordinarily extreme version of this, but but it is impossible to know what everybody else is kind of getting. You're having different experiences. You're having the same experience but a different experience. I don't really know where I'm going with that.
No, I think.
But I mean, I suppose it just means it means that one of the. I suppose what that brings into my mind is maybe that's one of the reasons why we're all so lonely. So so I'm comparing it. So the Netflix thing, right? Yeah. The Netflix thing where everybody watches, whatever, the program, Star Trek. I think there was a new Star Trek. I was trying to purposefully be out of date, but I think there might be a new thing. And everybody gets together and talks about it. But the social media thing is kind of more nefarious than that. It's like it fundamentally forces us all to be even more individual than we are.
That's true.
And individuality isn't great. I think it's really bad. I mean, it's awful.
We should probably, I mean, individuality is a whole concept that maybe we should discuss in a future episode generally, for how that's ruining our meaning and spiritual journeys generally.
Yeah.
I'm just going to try bring this back to the brain plasticity side of things, and about that kind of like putting in good things and putting in negative things and how that translates. So I wonder how the advent of social media and getting ourselves reflected back at each other over and over again, and this kind of like negative feedback cycle that reduces our world and reduces our connection with other people, what that's physically doing to our brain, and how it then changes what we see. Because I guess if you're always having, I mean, that's like, you know, brain plasticity is our brain algorithms. You know, if we're constantly feeding it negativity, or maybe not negativity, but whatever we're feeding it is what we're primed to see next. And whilst the world becomes scary according to the news and according to what Facebook would like us to believe, I think it was in one of the documentaries we've watched about social media, where they know that things that provoke anger are the things that get clicked on more than the things that provoke joy.
And again, that's not a conspiracy theory.
That's not conspiracy.
That's
it's
literally
proven.
a business model.
It's proven.
Well, it's not even covered up. I mean, that's
just outwardly true. So if that being the case, and we're being pumped fear and anger onto social media, people who are using it all the time are probably, I don't know, exercising their brain. The negative, let's be as simple as, and it's definitely not this, but imagine you have negative channels and positive channels that lead you to your negative emotions and channels that lead you to your positive ones. If you're constantly on social media arguing with people and being provoked to argue by the things that Facebook and Instagram is constantly showing you, you're training those negative channels, and your positive channels are getting clogged up. They're not getting used. It's like, you know, if you're going for walks on paths, the one that's walked all the time is going to be really easy to go on, and the one that no one ever goes on, well, people are going to go on it less because it's harder to go down. And that's how I think social media and all that perpetuates this negative stuff that goes on our brain. And I see it in some of my friends, the people who have outwardly said, you know, I now use it less because I'm just becoming an angry person, are just that. They're becoming more angry. They became more angry and became more negative, because you're in a world where that's what's rewarded and that's what's thrown back at you. And because of this doom scrolling and how easy it is to lose hours to it, you've accidentally trained your brain. Imagine if you did an hour's exercise every day in a certain way. That muscle would be, you know, incrementally more strong every week. If you're doom scrolling 2 hours without even noticing, imagine how much...
Big thumbs.
Your thumbs are massive. But you've just trained your brain in a negative way without even realising for 2 hours that day. Now you do that every day, and then haven't maybe actively put anything positive in there, because it is, you have to, I feel like, especially nowadays world, you do have to actively take steps to do things positively. You have to take a step back and realise, weigh up, actually that's a negative thing and that's a positive thing. And that's also, because this is all holy and thou and easy to say, but I think the first step is to take a step back and weigh up, actually, I see this for what it is. I see this as a negative experience. And like I say, the friends that I know that have quit their social media accounts for these reasons. I mean, you've quit yours, maybe not consciously for this reason, but a reason of that is definitely to improve your health, improve your mind.
Oh yeah, 100%. But
like just not having that negative input into yourself.
But the brain plasticity in that context then comes into what you can do about it.
Yeah.
So because ultimately, so here's my experience. It took me a long time to get off all social media, but I can tell you exactly when I realised that I was going to be able to, and it was about 4 years ago, and I've only fully been off it for 6 months. Or
beginning of the year, wasn't it? Yeah.
And I suppose for a long time before that, I was pretty much off it. But yeah, anyway, it took a long time, and it was because when we shut the cafe. So just in case you don't know, we used to run a cafe in Hastings, and at the very start of COVID, we lost the space that the cafe was in, and so it was 4 years' work that was just finished.
Yeah.
And that was fine, and we've talked about that before, and we don't need to go into that too much, but it was, you know, and again, it's worked out extraordinarily well, so I'm not sort of being sad clown over here about it. But at the time when it all happened, and obviously no one knew it was happening because this was all in the lockdown and we weren't talking to anyone, or our friends knew about it. But when we made the decision that we were going to shut the cafe, and we were like, right, well, we're going to have to tell everyone about this. And we had a lot of very regular customers, and I think I don't think it's big-headed to say a lot of people really loved the place. Yeah. And so I was like, I'm going to have to post something on social media about it. So I posted the thing on social media explaining the situation, basically saying it was over, more or less, for want of a better description. And I knew, because that was kind of a bit of it was a hard, it was a grieving process going on.
Well, we weren't over it yet at that point.
And so I knew that I couldn't take. I knew that what was going to happen is loads of people were going to be very sad, but also very sort of caring. Or just a mixture of. I didn't want any of it. I didn't want people to be nice. I didn't want people to be sad. I didn't want to hear anything. Yeah. So, as a result of that, I was like, cannot look at my phone because I know that Instagram's going to be pinging and pinging and pinging. And I'm sure it was. So all I did, I just shut the phone in a cupboard. But the site, and I'd done that before when it was like I'm using this too much. And people say they shut phones away and stuff, and that's a good practice, and we should all do it. But the difference here was that I actually did not want to see what was coming through. Yeah. So therefore, I was sort of like as someone who at that time was completely addicted to looking at their phone, completely addicted to social media, I had a kind of like another reason not to look at the thing. It wasn't just that I'd shut it away and like in a day's time I'd think, I'll just have a quick check.
Well, yeah, it wasn't like fighting a craving.
No, it was fighting the opposite. Yeah. It was like a craving not to see it.
Yeah, all of a sudden.
And so anyway, I left the thing alone, and it was only, I think it was for 4 days, I think. Yeah. It stayed there, and I didn't look at it once. And then I felt sort of up to it, I suppose, and I opened it. And to be honest, I think initially I didn't even look at it, and I immediately just kind of got rid of all of the notifications that went on that post, and it took me a while before I actually could look at them. But I started using it again, and what I found, without any expectations whatsoever, and again, I want to be clear, I did not put my phone in the cupboard because I thought to myself, I want to get off this thing. I've always had somewhat negative associations with social media, but fundamentally I just thought I was going to go back on it. Yeah. And of course I was wanted to continue the business, so it was kind of important to maintain a nowadays business needs an Instagram sort of thing. So, but what I found was, without even thinking about it or noticing it, after those 4 days of it being in the cupboard, I looked at it like twice the next day, and then a couple of times the day after that, and maybe 3 times the day after that, and maybe 2 days. And I was like, and it was only after about a week I thought, fuck, I've not looked at my phone hardly at all, and I'd missed nothing. I'd missed out on absolutely nothing. Yeah. And anyway, and I thought, God, this is amazing. Just 4 days without the thing. And I'm not with it now. Of course, what happened was, slowly but surely, I was using it 5 times a day. Then I was using it 10 times a day, and then before you knew it, I was just back to normal. And it was only 6 months later that I thought, God, do you remember that time? And I left it in the cupboard for 4 days, and it kind of fixed me a bit. But the point that I'm trying to make is that if you can actually come up with a way, and maybe I'm sure everyone's kind of done something along these, and I know there's loads of things like this, like you came off social media for a month in one, was it this January?
It was January, yeah.
But I suppose the point is I think that is brain plasticity. Yeah. It's that without thinking about it, I completely got my brain used to not doing something. It didn't take very long, and then before you knew it, it was fine. Yeah. We did the same recently. We changed our diets quite a lot. I'm sure that is something that we will talk about in the future, but I'm not going to go into it specifically. But we changed our diets in a big way, in as much as we went from eating one type of thing to a completely different type of thing, and a completely different type of thing that you needed a lot more effort and time and what have you. And initially, for the first couple of days, it felt like such a slog and such an effort, and it was such a hoo-ha.
But also like entertaining and like an event that it doesn't feel like it's going to be your routine. It just feels like, isn't this a bit of a show?
But but it's 2-ish months, probably not even 2 months now that we've kind of done this, and now it's completely normalised, and I don't even think about how we used all the things that I thought I would miss. It's not even that I don't miss them, it's that I don't think about them. It just doesn't even come into my brain. That isn't because we've got some sort of superpower or that we've done some major thing. It's just that we made a decision, stuck to it for a very short period of time, and then our brains changed, and then we were doing it normally.
That's it, and it's that extra bit more than habit forming, because some people will just be like, well, that's just a habit, it's just routine.
But even if it's a habit, that's fine.
No, but I think it's the extra bit that attaches it to the brain is the not thinking about it thing. Like, I think it's that extra bit on habit forming. Like, habit forming and routine is just, I'll just do the same thing every day, and it gets easy because you do the same thing every day. But brain plasticity is that tiny little bit extra, which is, it's your attitudes literally change in your brain. Like, like I say, there's science behind it, I'm sure, but the pathways open up to one way and close to another way. And it does change, but like you say, it can slip. Like, it's gradual to the other way, and it's one path becoming shut off as the other one opens up, but it's not quick.
Well, also the things that we're talking about, or certainly with social media, but actually and with food entirely, is that, and again, this is not a conspiracy, but these things are obviously addictive. I mean, everything to some extent is a bit addictive. There's a brilliant book about dopamine I read. I know the woman's name is Anna Lamke. I can't remember what the name of the book is, but I mean, it's got dopamine in the title.
I think it's just called dopamine.
It might just be called dopamine. But yeah, it's about how these things, we all talk about dopamine a lot because of the way social media kind of fiddles with it, basically. Yeah. But it's not just as simple as that. I mean, dopamine has a lot to do with addiction, like proper addiction, but also like minor addictions. Yeah. Or not even, and things that we don't necessarily see as addictions. And the thing is when I read that book, what I came to the conclusion was, I can choose to be addicted to something which is bad, or I can choose to be addicted to something which is good. Yeah. And there is choice involved. And I think a lot of people might say, oh, fuck off. Yeah. No, there's not choice. It's hard to, and yes, it is hard, but I think what you need to think about is that we're all making those choices anyway. Yeah. There's this bit, Mo Gawdat, right?
Just thinking that same chappie.
Yeah, okay. Well, you can talk about it because this isn't really about this subject, but you talk about it more on point. I'm going off on one a little bit. Okay. But in one of his books, he says, if you absolutely don't know about something, like if there's no way of you possibly knowing about something, and this can be something big or small. Yeah. Fuck it. I'll give examples, even though one of them's going to put everybody off immediately. But so it could be that you think that someone that you met today really hated you, right? But there's no way of you knowing that. You don't know anything about them, or even someone you've never met but you're about to meet or something. You assume they hate you. Or equally, is there a God or is there not a God? Right?
Oh, there you are. Back to that God-shaped hole.
But yeah, the point is that if it's something that you just don't know, there is no way of you ever finding out, or at least knowing in that moment. Choose the one which makes you happy. Yeah. Right. Now, when I read that in that book, I immediately went, "Oh, get lost." Scoff. Of course not. They were like, and I'm sure that anybody hearing that is just like, "Well, no, that's not as simple as that. Life isn't as simple as that. You can't just choose to be happy." And I would agree. I mean, you can't choose to be happy. That's too simple. But you can. But when you're choosing whether to believe one thing or another thing, no matter what it is, you're choosing. Yeah. So if you're choosing the negative version of that, if you're saying that person that I'm about to meet hates me, you're choosing that. Yeah. That's you're not doing anything different to the thing that I'm suggesting you do. Yeah. It's not like there's not some superpower or some ultimate skill of like I'm great and I've done loads of work on myself and all this breath work has really helped me and therefore I can choose to think that everybody loves me. Yeah. That's not it. The point is that choosing that everybody loves you is just as difficult as choosing that everybody doesn't like you, or just as difficult as choosing that some people love you and some people hate you.
Equally, it's one half of the same thing. It's not like, oh, it's just easier to do one. No, it's
the same thing.
It's just one side of the same coin, and people lean on the negative and believe that the positive is harder, but it is just one side of the same coin.
Yeah, and of course, by the way, I mean, not everything is choice. Like, there are clearly, well, maybe we'll talk about diet in this context, but, our chemical makeups are all different. 100%. I'm not suggesting that if you're depressed, you can just turn around and say, oh, tomorrow I'm not going to be depressed because I'm making a decision to be depressed. It's not that simple. It's not about those big things. It's not about saying tomorrow I'm going to be happy.
Yeah. It's
about tiny choices, tiny things that you do in your life where and some of those things are like practical. It's like, do I sit at home and watch Netflix all day, or do I go for a walk in the park? We all know which one is going to be better. And one, maybe, I suppose you could argue one takes more effort, but fundamentally neither are difficult, and you could definitely just choose the one that you know is going to be better for you. But it's not even big things like that. It's just like tiny expectations. It's fundamentally things that you just don't know. Yeah. You have no way of knowing. And most of the time, and I won't even say this about anybody else. For me, in most of my life, I've always chosen this person hates me. Yeah. This situation is going to be rubbish. I'm going to make a fool out of myself. Whatever. And those things, again, don't get me wrong, anxiety exists as separately from this, but those things create anxiety, so they're going to make it worse.
I mean, and just to go really into anxiety and depression on this, but I think it applies to everything. That's why CBT is the treatment for.
Well, this is CBT.
Yeah, but that's why anxiety. That's why treatment is the anxiety and depression treatment, and people scoff at it because it takes effort. But hate to break it to people, like it's going to take effort to get rid of these things. Yes, depression has your loads of chemical shit involved, and people. Who don't like when they get told CBT and would rather pills, and don't like when they get given pills and don't get therapy. But I think CBT is wonderful for everything. And it is the core of exactly this. It's about recognizing that whilst it's shit that your brain is trying to give you these thoughts, and there may be chemicals really impacting why you have more negative thoughts than positive, it's recognizing that wherever you get that thought, it is the thought that is making you sad, not necessarily the chemicals in your brain, or not necessarily the fact that it's happened to you and there's no way out of it. And that's what CBT works on. It's this ABC method of antecedent is the thing, B is behavior, and C is cognition, I think.
Yeah, which is
consequence, even,
which is just pure stoicism.
Exactly, and and it's recognizing the thing you can change is your behavior, and the thing that changes your behavior is what you thought of the thing that happened. And it's like what you said. You can have an example of, I think this is the common example for CBT. Someone walks down the street and ignores you. Actually, that's even already putting a judgment on it. Someone walks down the street, it seems like they look your way, and then they walk straight past you. So if your thought is, I think that person ignored me because they do not like me, or I think that person ignored me deliberately, I think they did that because they don't like me, I now feel really crap about myself, I'm now going to sit and wallow. If you were able to open yourself up to an alternative thought, and it's just taking one step back, which is all this ever is really, and go, okay, that person walked straight past me. I've put a judgment on it by saying ignore, so I'm going to not do that. They walked straight past me. Maybe they were lost in thought. Maybe they're worried about something. Oh, I wonder if they're okay. And then your behaviour is, I'm going to call them. The two behaviours of either sitting at home and thinking that person hates me with no evidence, to actually, I'm going to take an interest in that person and just check they're okay. The outcome is completely different. And that's that kind of, whilst it's not a choice to have negative thoughts, if you can just take a second to recognize that it is a thought that you're having, you then have a choice as to what you do with it. It's what mindfulness and meditation is entirely all about.
Well, it's again, going all the way back to earlier on, it's another thing which comes up in so many different arenas, which is one of those 20 or so wisdoms. Yeah. That you can find in the Bible, you can find in Buddhism, you can find in psychology, you can find in psychiatry, you can find in behavioural therapy, you can find everywhere.
Yeah, comes up.
And it's those people are not all saying, "Oh, I read this thing in the Quran, and it made me think about the fact that maybe there's some science," but not at all. It's coming from people looking into these things and all coming to the same conclusion, completely separate to each other. Yeah. And if that doesn't prove that there's at least some truth to it, I don't know what will. Loads of people that are much cleverer than me, you, and probably everybody listening to this have come to the same conclusion. It's worth putting some weight on it.
And earlier you referenced them being from like different metaphorical places, but let's be real, like different time and places, like all over the world and from different centuries and different millennia, people have thought the same thing. There must be a truth in it. Like, that's what makes a truth. Like, it keeps happening over and over again. And we're all wondering the same things. But, I mean, that's a lovely connective thing, I think. Like, especially when it is like, you know, religions scream at each other for all different things and people want to scream different things at each other over and over again throughout the years. Actually, we're all just trying to work out the same freaking thing, which is, you know, how do I live? How do I have meaning in life? And we all cry and scream at each other about different things, but actually we're all doing the same things, having the same journeys.
I think going back to your CBT example as well, and this is very much a Verveke trope, but I mean, I'm sure definitely comes from philosophy and probably from lots of different places, but there's a circular element to that as well. Going back to your example of you either decide that someone hates you because they've ignored you, or you decide that somebody is not all right and therefore you should check up on them.
Yeah.
There's a circle in that, because whichever one you choose, if you decide they hate you and it puts you in a really bad frame of mind, and then you stay at home the next day because you don't want to see people and they might all hate you, and then 2 days later you think that everybody hates you, and then you stop talking to people and then you become
you're prone
lonely.
to see negative things.
So that's one side of it. Or equally, you think there might be something wrong with them, you give them a ring, they really appreciate the fact that you've checked on them, and then maybe you arrange to go out with them, and then you meet a load of friends while you're out, and then you have a nice time, and then you feel good about your life. There's you everything is circular in that way. Yeah. I mean, whether it be a conversation between two people, whereby whatever attitude you bring to a conversation with another person, you're going to some extent get back. Yeah. There's a lot of reflection in every sort of interaction that we have, but also on a much bigger, on a sort of lifestyle way. Yeah. Everything is always a circle. It's always you put something in and then you get whatever you deserve from putting that in back.
100%.
And then as a result of that, that's going to influence the way that you then behave going forward, because the world is just going to reflect back at you. So if it's why I feel sorry for psychopaths. It's why I don't necessarily kind of like, we were talking last week about Donald Trump. Yeah. Like, it's why I would feel sorry for him, because he's got all of the riches in the world and all of that sort of stuff, but his engagements on a day-to-day level, he has no idea about this because his ego's too big, but he's continuously putting negative things out to other people, therefore continuously getting negative things back. He's been doing that for 73 years or however old he is, and as a result, that's just, if you just sort of imagine your inner soul or whatever, like his is rotten and horrible, crusty, and whereas someone with no money and none of the opportunities that Donald Trump had, but who's just been nice to people their whole life, 100%. Their soul is massive. Yeah. Much bigger than all of his money bags.
Your soul is bigger than Donald Trump's money bags.
Well, it can be.
It can be. I agree. I mean, we may or may not talk about it more, but that Mo Gawdat book is called Soul for Happy. For those who don't know, I mean, he's pretty big, and he's turned up on loads of podcasts. And he's the one that first, to my knowledge, mentioned this brain plasticity in anything that we've watched. But it does relate to...
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely not the first person.
No, but that's what I mean to say. Like, he is the reason that we have heard of it. But
this
he's
podcast is about our experiences of life, not
life.
Science,
actually. But he wrote a book called Soul for Happy. He is a tech engineer. He was the CEO of Google X, and he's very much an engineer background. Had a great life with loads of money and da-da-da-da.
We described this last week.
Oh, did we describe it? Fantastic. Yeah. So anyway, he basically writes this book about how to be happy. And he gets a lot of flack because he basically does exactly that. He kind of says about this choosing to be happy. But it is, it's something about like weighing up your expectations of life to then have a happier life. The example you gave about if you have no idea, choose the better thing because it'll just make you happy. He says another thing about when you're faced with people who you find difficult. And it's within a chapter where he talks about negative thoughts, and it's easier said than done, but he says what you should try and practice doing is realizing when you're having a negative thought. And he frames it very simply and very easy, and it does make it sound like it's all whimsical and just so easy for him, which is one of his criticisms, I'm sure, is he realizes having a negative thought, and instead of connecting to it, he says that he tells his brain, bring me a better thought. And he says the way you need to a way in which you can practice this is every time someone else makes you annoyed. He's just like, realize you're being annoyed by someone, let go of that, make it not personal at all, and treat them like they're your teacher, like they're a teacher bringing you a lesson. They've brought you this negative thought. You didn't have the negative thought. They've come into your life. You've attributed them as bringing negative into your life. But actually, the reason you think negatively in that minute is because your thoughts. So you do this, try and think of something nicer. This person that's really awful in front of you, think of one positive thing about them in that moment and then start treating them better, because if someone treats you like crap, you immediately don't necessarily feel the obligation to want to treat them well. But he's trying to use that, or try and point that out as an example of just try that person that's being horrible to you in that moment, try being kind to them and see if it changes anything. It may well not. You don't know who you're dealing with. But it's about being inquisitive as to why someone's being horrible and actually trying not to identify with that immediately. They might be being horrible because they're in a bad mood and it's nothing to do with you. And try and see a positive in them, be kind, and just see if it changes. I mean, the vice versa happens. I've mentioned it before. When you go at something with a negative attitude, it's what you were saying. You get it reflected back at you, and then lo and behold, the situation you thought was going to be crap probably is crap. But if you can have a better attitude going in, you never know, things might work out a bit better.
I was very cynical about that when I first read it, to be honest, in as much as it did just seem too easy.
Yeah.
But in fairness, he doesn't say this is easy by any means. But I think that the conclusion ultimately that I've come to, and this comes into so many different things that we probably have talked about and will talk about, is it's about discipline. Yeah. So it's about, the thing is, you do that once, it's not going to make any difference. And actually, if anything, it's probably going to make you more annoyed. Right?
Yeah, because it won't work, that balance of chances.
Someone will come and be horrible to you, and you'll think, well, I'm going to try and do what that man from the book said, and then you'll try and do all of those things. You won't be able to do them because they're really hard to do.
Yeah.
You'll still, all the feelings will be there. You'll be really annoyed, and then you'll try and be maybe slightly nicer back to that person. That person will probably treat you even worse, and it will just make you feel worse.
Yeah, you'll be like, oh, I tried that positivity stuff, and you made it so easy, and it's not. And blah.
But it's not about that. It's not about the reaction that you get. It's about minimizing the effect that any one experience can have on you, I think. If you just do it and do it and do it and do it, your life will start to get slightly better. You'll start to feel better about people. And it's like a cumulative thing.
Yeah.
And what you're doing, going all the way back to what we were talking about before, is you're sort of disciplining your subconscious.
Yeah.
But you have no control over your subconscious. No. So therefore, you don't really know that it's happening. It's like meditation. You can meditate for as long as you want, but for a long time, you're not going to have any idea what it's doing for you. But it is doing something for you.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's been proven time and time again, scientifically and and by experience. So it's about being disciplined with these things. And it's like everything else. It's like, the diet that we've taken on, you had to be disciplined about it. And once you were disciplined about it for a while, it got easier. Doing that fucking Wim Hof breathing to begin with, you look like a mad person.
You still look like a mad person.
Well, you still look like a mad person, but you care about it less once you've done it for a while. Getting in a cold shower is hard, particularly to begin with. It's still not easy, and I've been doing it for 3 years or something.
Yeah.
But it's got easier, and what's happened is I now don't think about the fact it's hard to have a cold shower. I think about the fact that all of the different positive things that I know that I'm going to get out of doing that.
Yeah.
And so it changes the way that you view things. And that's not really a conscious thing.
Yeah.
I'm describing it in a conscious way, but fundamentally I think what's happened inside my brain is that subconsciously something's changed.
Yeah.
And so, fundamentally, and that's CBT is absolutely 100% just about discipline.
Yeah.
That's all it is, really.
Discipline,
it's about saying, I am going to do this, and I'm just going to keep doing this.
Yeah.
And of course, we're all very disciplined. Again, we're all very disciplined about doing the opposite of that. We're all very disciplined about making sure that we catch up on all the current YouTube videos and Netflix videos. And we're all very disciplined about the amount of time we can spend on our phones. But we're not disciplined necessarily about the things that might make our lives a bit better. And and I'm not saying that from a holier than thou place. I'm not. Yeah. You're not.
Well, again, I think it comes back to on balance, we are as a culture surrounded by negativity. So
addictive negativity as well.
Negativity. So those positives, you do have to be so disciplined to do it because it's so easy to do the other thing. And that's not, when we're being a bit holier than thou potentially by saying all these things. It is hard. It is really hard in our current world to stick to the positive disciplines and to that, because it's so easy to just slip into what the world and what the culture really needs from you, which is to be angry and to be fearful so that you buy things. But it is worth knowing that, you know, the hard work pays off, as it were. Like, you do get something out of it. It's just not immediate. You just have to trust that it is working for you. And we've just had the luxury of being able to do that. I say luxury. We've chosen to do it. It's not a luxury in that respect.
I have to say there's no degree of privilege or luxury that works its way into this, because what you're doing does not involve you having anything.
Yeah, it's just making the choices to let go of some things.
Yeah, we don't have huge amounts of time or resources or anything else. If
we do have time and resources, it's because of choices to
getting up at 5:30 in the bloody morning so that I can do breathing.
100%. But that is, but it is. It's choosing to live within our means so we have more time to do things. It's choosing to not have a TV license so that we can put our evenings into doing other things like watching John Verveke or reading books.
But we didn't just admit to a crime then, by the way. We don't have a TV license because we don't watch TV. Sorry, just to be clear.
Just to be very clear, yes.
It's a bit like that time we robbed that bank. That's why we
were
able to do
and all that drugs we make in our basement. But I do think it sounds privileged, but it's not. I think I've felt this before when we've talked about how like good things can be for us, but it's because of choices that you can make, and you just have to keep making them, bashing your head against the positivity wall.
Yeah, you can't. You need a degree of privilege. You know, you can't do this if you're starving. You know, I mean, or you're in a war-torn country or something. I mean, clearly in that context. But sometimes I think that, I'm so well off because I've got the opportunity to better my life.
Yeah.
Is used as an excuse not to better your life, and that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. Because
you're only going to make the world slightly better.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, sure. That's not to say you should only think about yourself and you should only try and make your own life better, but by any means. But it's like, the idea of privilege often gives people an excuse not to make their own life better because they say, well, I'm already too privileged. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Logically, it doesn't make any sense.
No.
And I think you're not going to make the world a worse place by your brain being a better place to live.
Yeah. And I guess it also plays into that the victim culture that is really prevalent. If you're too privileged, you're then a victim of being too privileged to do anything. It's just easier to be like, this is an excuse not to do stuff. Well, actually, just a tiny bit of effort to make yourself happier will make it folds out to everyone else. Like the little web. You can make the web positive as opposed to that weird negative Cronenberg that we live in.
I assume you don't mean the World Wide Web.
No.
At this point, I think it's jumped the shark. I don't think there's any way that we can make that positive all of a sudden. I don't think you can suddenly just say, come on, guys, let's sort Facebook out and make it a positive place to be.
Let's stop referring to a web then, but with the positive Cronenberg that unites us all.
Well, on that bombshell, maybe we should wrap this up.
Maybe we should. Thank you very much for listening again.
Yes.
To
indeed.
episode 65/2. I don't know where we're going with that, but it is Sohbet now.
It is
spiritual
Sohbet
conversations. Now, yes. It's so better. No, terrible pun. Does not go there.
Thank you very much for listening. We will be back in 2 weeks' time.
2 weeks.
Every other Thursday.
Beautiful.
Feel free to email us at shamcityroasters@gmail.com.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's pretty much it. Thank you for listening again. And
get disciplined, guys.
Get disciplined. Have a lovely couple of weeks and catch you next time.
Goodbye.
Ciao.